now, as promised, the news in detail. Let's begin in the U.S., where authorities have reported 2,750 deaths in the last 24 hours, taking the tally to 45,063. Globally, the number of infections has risen to over 2.5 million, with more than 177,000 deaths. More on that now in this report.
Amid the calls to lift lockdowns, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has warned of a second and an even worse wave of COVID-19 next winter. But President Donald Trump is gearing up to end the lockdown, even though the number of daily deaths and infections is surging.
At a time when millions of American workers and families are struggling with the financial consequences of the virus, it's critical to continue the medical war while reopening the economy in a safe and responsible fashion. During this time, Americans must maintain strict vigilance and continue to practice careful hygiene, social distancing, and the other protective measures.
Meanwhile, Spain's Health Minister Salvador Illa said the next weekend children will be allowed to go outside for a walk. The hard-hit UK has pledged to lead the global effort to find a cure and put an end to the crisis.
But I'm certain that we will throw everything we've got at developing a vaccine. The UK is at the forefront of the global effort. We've put more money than any other country into the global search for a vaccine. And for all the efforts around the world, 2 of the leading vaccine developments are taking place here at home at Oxford and Imperial.
The UN has warned the world is at risk of widespread famines of biblical proportions due to the pandemic. In a report, the World Food Programme estimated the number of people suffering from hunger could go from 135 million to over 250 million.
Here in Pakistan, 17 people have died from COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, bringing the tally to 209. The Health Ministry reported 533 new infection cases, increasing the total to 9,749. The Health Ministry said 2,156 patients of coronavirus have recovered so far. The ministry said over 118,000 tests have been conducted countrywide, with 5,637 since yesterday. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says the third phase of the repatriation of Pakistanis abroad will start today. The Foreign Minister said 5,000 Pakistanis will be brought back every week under this phase. Indian forces have martyred 4 more civilians in the Shopian district of occupied Kashmir. In the ongoing 8-month siege of the valley, occupation forces have martyred 93 Kashmiris, including 3 women. The civilians were targeted during a cordon and search operation by the Indian Army in Menhora village. Local officials said a door-to-door search operation is still underway. They said Indian authorities have suspended internet service and have blocked all entry and exit points. The occupied valley has been reeling under a curfew and communications blackout for the past 262 days. The Indian government has further tightened restrictions on journalists and media in occupied Kashmir. With many already jailed, New Delhi charged Kashmiri journalist Gohar Gilani under the draconian Unlawful Activities Act. In its charge sheet, Indian authorities blamed the Srinagar-based journalist's description of ground realities as glorification of terrorism. Reacting to these allegations, Gilani said an ugly pattern of hounding and silencing journalists in the valley has intensified since last August. Earlier this week, New Delhi booked Kashmiri female photojournalist Musarrat Zahra under the same law. Under this act, both journalists can face jail time for up to 7 years. In Afghanistan, the government says the Taliban have killed 19 security officials in attacks in the northern Saripol and central Logar provinces. Saripol governor's spokesperson Zabiullah Amani said 11 people were killed in the province when the Taliban attacked checkpoints. He said the Taliban also took casualties, but the government does not have the exact number. A spokesperson for the Ministry of Mines and Petroleum has said 8 security personnel died in an ambush in Logar. The Taliban have not claimed responsibility for these attacks. Afghan National Security Council spokesperson Javed Faisal says Kabul has released 71 more Taliban prisoners. The Afghan government had earlier released 300 inmates in 3 groups under the Doha peace deal. In a tweet, Faisal said the inmates were released from 7 provinces, including Nangarhar, Laghman, Kunar, Nuristan, and Faryab. Faisal said they were released according to their age, health, and length of remaining sentence. He said this step was taken as part of peace efforts and to battle COVID-19 under President Ashraf Ghani's orders. The Taliban, too, have released 60 prisoners of the Kabul administration, including soldiers and security officials. Iran's Revolutionary Guards say they have successfully launched the country's first military satellite. The operation comes more than 2 months after Tehran failed to put another satellite into orbit. In a statement, the military said the satellite named Noor was propelled from the Kavir Desert in central Iran. It said the satellite was put into orbit at an altitude of 425 kilometers from Earth's surface. The military called the launch a major accomplishment in Iran's space domain. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin have agreed to cooperate over the fight against COVID-19. Russian state media said the 2 leaders discussed bilateral ties and an exchange of experiences to control the virus in a phone call. In a tweet, Rouhani said both leaders agreed that the EU must take action against U.S. behavior, which violates global conventions. The president said the EU must also act on Washington's veto of Iran's loan request from the IMF to fight the pandemic. Rouhani also held a phone call with the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, and discussed regional security. In a statement, Rouhani's office said the 2 leaders expressed hope to see a ceasefire in Syria and Yemen. Israeli forces have killed a Palestinian at a military checkpoint near the southern West Bank city of Bethlehem. The Palestinian Health Ministry confirmed the casualty of the Palestinian driver. The Israeli military says the Palestinian tried to stab the soldier at the checkpoint. It said officers responded to the attack. Tensions in the region have been high since U.S. President Donald Trump revealed his Middle East peace plan in February. The plan gives Israel green light to annex more Palestinian territories in East Jerusalem. In Lebanon, hundreds of protesters have returned to the streets of Beirut against rising poverty and hardship. Protesters remained in their cars to maintain social distancing as a COVID-19 precaution. More in this report.
People flocked to the streets in other parts of Lebanon as well, including the northern city of Tripoli. They called on the government to make efforts to recover the severely damaged economy.
We are here to say that amid coronavirus and amid the economic crisis, the state left us with 2 choices. We either die from hunger or die from the disease. So since it is death anyway, let us die while standing up at least and taking a stand. Today we went down to say no. We did not leave the squares. We are here on the streets, here since October 17, the revolution, and we are still going on the streets. When the shutdown was announced, we all or some of us abided by it. But the hungry people cannot abide by the shutdown because this is just illusionary plans on paper.
Spain says it has arrested one of Europe's most wanted ISIS fighters in the southern town of Almeria. In a statement, the Interior Ministry said the Egyptian man fought in Syria and Iraq and was hiding in an apartment when police detained him. The ministry said the fighter has appeared in gory propaganda pictures of ISIS crimes. The statement said police also arrested 2 other people and are trying to establish their identities. It said the 3 suspects had arrived via North Africa and were keeping a low profile in Spain. Police did not reveal the identity of the arrested man. In France, protesters have continued to clash with police for a 3rd night in a row in suburbs around Paris. Police said protesters torched several cars and aimed fireworks at them. They said officers fired tear gas to disperse demonstrators. Trouble first broke out after a motorcyclist was injured in a collision with an unmarked police car during a check on Sunday. Witnesses said officers deliberately opened the door into the motorcyclist's path. Police deny the claim and say they wanted to question the rider, who was speeding the wrong way down a street without a helmet. They said they have launched an inquiry into the incident. The UK Foreign Ministry's Under-Secretary Simon MacDonald says Prime Minister Boris Johnson is expected to stick to the Brexit transition deadline. Johnson has repeatedly insisted he has no plans to extend post-Brexit transition agreements, which expire on December 31st. Speaking to Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee, MacDonald said the extension is clearly an option, but the government stance is also clear. He said Brussels and London will have to agree by the end of June in order to extend the period by 1 or 2 years. Russia has called on the European Union to obtain approval from the UN Security Council for a naval mission in the Mediterranean. The EU has launched an operation named Irina to monitor the implementation of Libya's arms embargo. Speaking to a think tank, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the EU's unwillingness to brief the UN on the operation raises questions. He said the bloc should request the Security Council for a special operation to monitor the embargo. Libya's UN-recognized government of national accord has also criticized the Irina initiative. The EU's naval mission will be able to inspect vessels on the high seas off the coast of Libya. 52 youth were killed by a militant group in northern Mozambique after they refused to be recruited into its ranks. A police spokesperson said the April 7th incident took place in the village of Shitashi in the Moidumbui district. The spokesperson said police have launched a search for the attackers. He requested villagers to collaborate with authorities in the fight against militants. Mozambique's extremist groups have killed more than 700 people over the past year. In Lebanon, a gunman has killed his wife and shot dead 8 others in the mountain town of Baaklin. State media said officials have captured the man. It said the man killed his wife with a knife before going on a shooting rampage. It reported that victims included the shooter's brother and 5 Syrian citizens. Officials said the motive for the crime is still unknown. The incident is being called Lebanon's worst mass shooting in decades. The Lebanese Prime Minister Hassan Diab has called on security agencies to accelerate their investigation. Saudi Arabia's King Salman has approved the performance of special Ramadan prayers in the holy mosques in Mecca and Medina. In a statement, the Presidency of the Holy Mosques Affairs said the prayers will be shortened with the continued suspension of entry of pilgrims. Officials said only employees and workers will be allowed to pray there. The summary was presented by the President General of the Mosques Authority to the King. Officials said there will be no vigil in both mosques this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Saudi Arabia has so far reported 11,631 cases and 109 deaths from the virus. I'll be back after this break with business news. Stay tuned for that. Let's start off our business news right here in Pakistan, which has allowed the import of bulk shipments of food items through Gwadar port for transit to Afghanistan. Islamabad said the step has been taken to maintain food supply in Afghanistan amid the COVID-19 outbreak. The Prime Minister's advisor on commerce, Razak Dawood, said under special permission the transition has been okayed. He said Pakistan has resumed handling of Afghan cargo at Gwadar port under the 2010 Transit Trade Agreement. The advisor said special permission will help in quicker transference of sugar, wheat and fertilizer to Afghanistan. He said unlike containers, these cargoes will be transported in sealed trucks to the neighboring country. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro says the impending OPEC Plus deal will hopefully stabilize the fluctuating oil market. Speaking to reporters, Maduro spoke of Venezuela's resistance to this week's crash in benchmark crude futures. Maduro said despite the historic plunge and Venezuelan petrol dropping to $10, the country is prepared to resist the crash.
Yesterday, I spoke to Russian President Vladimir Putin on various issues. President Putin reaffirmed his support for the constitutional government that I had, for Venezuelan democracy, for peace in Venezuela. We reaffirmed all cooperation plans on working fronts. We spoke about the issue of petrol. We are waiting for the OPEC Plus G20 deal to come into effect on May 1.
Facebook says it will spend $5.7 billion for 10% of India's Reliance Industries digital business. The merger with Jio Platforms, owned by India's richest man, Mukesh Ambani, will mark one of the biggest foreign investments in the country. Facebook said it intends to link up its messaging subsidiary WhatsApp with Jio to increase business. India is Facebook's biggest single market with some 400 million users. In 4 years, Jio Telecoms has become the country's biggest mobile operator with 388 million subscribers. In a video statement, Ambani said the move will empower nearly 30 million small shops to digitally transact with every customer in the neighborhood. The streaming service Netflix has more than doubled its projections for new customers amid the lockdown. However, it predicted a weaker second half of the year if stay-at-home orders to fight the coronavirus pandemic are lifted. The company had predicted it would get 7 million subscribers from January to March, but it gained almost 16 million during the same period. The world's largest streaming service has now nearly 183 million subscribers. Netflix has issued a forecast of adding 7.5 million new customers in the second quarter, despite uncertainty over when lockdowns may end.
Think about it as we're in the same uncertainty that everyone else is. The things we are certain of is the internet is growing. It's a bigger part of people's lives, thankfully. And the people want entertainment. They want to be able to escape and connect, whether times are difficult or joyous. That's pulling up. We had an increase in subscriber growth in March. That's, essentially a pull forward of the rest of the year. So our guess is that subs will be light in Q3 and Q4 relative to prior years because of that.
The company is among few businesses to benefit from lockdowns, gaining 11% despite the plummeting stock markets. Shares of Netflix were up by half percentage points at $436 in after-hours trading. Well, European stock markets are trading higher despite widespread concerns over the coronavirus outbreak and a slump in oil prices. London's FTSE 100 and Frankfurt's DAX have gained over 1.5% each. The CAC 40 in Paris is trading over 1% higher. In Asia, Seoul's Kospi led the gains, closing nearly 1% higher. The Nikkei 225 edged lower. The Shanghai Composite closed over 0.5% higher. Meanwhile, the international benchmark Brent crude oil price has lost over 8%, pairing some earlier losses. The U.S. WTI crude is trading over 4.5% lower, just slightly above $11 per barrel. Let's now find out what the weather is like around the world. Well, for the latest updates on these and other stories, you can follow us on our social media at Indus.News. Thanks for watching this bulletin.